By the time Marin Ashby reached the royal laundry chute, the Alpha King's largest war wolf cub was wearing half a silver breastplate as a hat. The smallest cub had stolen a duke's ceremonial sock and was presenting it to the horrified court like a battlefield trophy. The third cub was sitting on the royal armorer, which Marin privately considered the most sensible decision anyone had made all morning. The armorer disagreed. He lay flat on the training sand with his arms stretched out, his polished boots pointing toward the ceiling, and one enormous black paw resting across his stomach. His mustache trembled every time he tried to breathe. The wolf cub on top of him, Brim, did not appear sorry. Brim rarely appeared sorry. Brim was the sharp-eyed one. He had smoke-gray fur, a white slash over one brow, and the moral certainty of a creature who believed every bad idea should be punished at once. If a handler approached with chains, Brim snarled. If a priest approached with incense, Brim sneezed. If a noble approached with advice, Brim removed himself, the advice, and sometimes part of the noble's coat. The cub wearing the breastplate hat was Rook. He was the largest of the three, already taller than most hunting hounds and wider than several barons. He had dark brown fur with silver moon marks along his shoulders. Rook's main method of protest was sitting. He sat on armor. He sat on training dummies. He sat on carts, benches, ceremonial shields, and one unfortunate visiting prince who had called him decorative. The smallest cub, Nyx, was not small in any useful sense. He was only small compared to the other two. He had pale gold eyes, quick paws, and the talent of a professional thief. At the moment, he held the Duke's sock in his teeth and wagged as if waiting for applause. No one applauded. The Duke made a thin sound near the observation rail. "That is silk," he whispered. Nyx dropped the sock, placed one paw on it, and gave the Duke a bright look that meant it had been silk. Marin stopped beside the laundry cart and took in the scene. Broken silver plates lay across the sand like moonlit fish scales. 3 torn leather straps hung from the practice gate. A royal beastmaster was standing on a barrel, refusing to come down. 2 apprentices held a measuring chain between them and wept quietly. Above the chaos, Alpha King Cedric Valethorn stood in the royal gallery. He looked exactly like every rumor said he did. Tall, black-haired, cold-eyed, broad-shouldered in a dark military coat fastened with silver clasps. He had the face of a man who could order a siege before breakfast and still remember which cousin had misfiled the grain accounts. Unfortunately, his sacred war wolf cubs were currently losing a war against clothing. Marin pushed a loose curl behind her ear and wondered whether anyone had checked the seams. No one in a palace ever checked the seams until something tore. Elder Varric slammed his moonwood cane against the gallery floor. The old Alpha had white hair, a formal robe, and the kind of voice that made servants drop plates in other rooms. "This is a disgrace," Varric declared. Rook shook the breastplate. It clanged around his ears. He seemed delighted by the disgrace. Captain Sorrel, commander of the Royal Guard, rubbed his jaw. "That is the 8th suit this month." "9th," the royal steward corrected from behind a clipboard. "If we count the small ceremonial shoulder cover that Nyx buried in the fountain." Nyx's ears perked. The steward lowered his clipboard. "Do not retrieve it," he warned the cub. Nyx retrieved it in his imagination and looked happy. Marin should have kept walking. She was a laundry maid, not even a senior laundry maid. She washed mud from training towels, blood from guard shirts, spilled wine from banquet linens, and wolf hair from everything. Her rank in the palace could be measured by how often people remembered to say her name instead of girl. She was also an Omega. That made some people soften their voices around her and others sharpen theirs. It made doors close gently in her face. It made Alphas offer protection when they meant control. It made Betas ask whether she was sure before she lifted a heavy basket, even while she was already lifting it. Marin had learned to survive by noticing what people ignored. Today, everyone was ignoring the torn inner lining on the breastplate Rook wore like a hat. The lining was wrong. Marin could see it from the laundry chute. Too stiff, too clean in some places, too rubbed in others. The seam near the shoulder was raised high enough to scrape skin during a run. The silver thread around the moon crest had been stitched through both leather and padding, which meant every movement would drag the design against the cub's fur. No wonder Rook had put it on his head. It was the least painful place to wear it. Elder Varric turned toward Cedric. Your Majesty, the cubs require discipline. They are moon-blessed werewolves, not kitchen puppies. Marin's mouth moved before her survival instincts caught it. Maybe stop dressing them like candlesticks. The training yard went still. Even Nyx froze with the sock. Marin closed her eyes for half a second. That had been outside voice. The steward turned slowly. His name was Lorne, and he had the fragile expression of a man who believed paperwork could prevent weather. Pardon? Lorne managed. Marin held the laundry cart handle with both hands. I said maybe the armor is the problem. Elder Varric stared down at her as if a mop bucket had presented a political theory. Who are you? Marin Ashby, sir, Royal Laundry. The silence deepened. The armorer, still under Brim, made a hopeful sound. Could the Royal Laundry remove the wolf? Brim pressed one paw down. The armorer stopped hoping. Cedric finally moved. He rested one gloved hand on the gallery rail and focused on Marin. His eyes were pale gray, almost silver in the morning light. They did not dismiss her. That was worse. Dismissal was easy to survive. Attention from an Alpha King felt like standing under a storm cloud that knew your address. Explain, Cedric ordered. Marin swallowed. Every person in the yard watched her. The Duke guarded his remaining sock. The armorer wheezed. Rook's breastplate hat slid over one eye. Nyx crept backward with the stolen sock in tiny steps, which only a fool would call stealth. Marin pointed at the torn armor scattered near the gate. The breaks are all in the same places. Shoulder, belly side, under the front legs. The straps are too hard, and the inner stitching is raised. If someone made me run in that, I would bite too. Captain Sorrel coughed into his fist. Elder Varric's brows drew together. The armor was blessed by the moon priests and forged by the royal armory. That explains why it shines, Marin replied carefully. It does not explain why it fits. The steward's quill stopped moving. Cedric's mouth did not smile. His eyes did something dangerous near it. Rook dropped the breastplate from his head. It landed with a heavy clang. He pushed it toward Marin with one paw. The entire court watched the sacred war wolf cub request laundry service. Marin wished the floor would open. It did not. Elder Varric recovered first. Your Majesty, this is absurd. A laundry omega cannot evaluate royal war gear. Rook sat on the breastplate. The sound was final. Cedric looked from the cub to Marin. Can you prove it? Marin's hands tightened on the cart handle. Not from here. Then come down. Lorne made a noise like a ripped receipt. Your Majesty, the liability forms. Later. But if she is eaten? Marin raised a hand. I would prefer not to be. Nyx picked up the sock again and wagged. Cedric's gaze stayed on her. One inspection. No touching the cubs unless they come to you. No chains. No horns. Captain Sorrel, keep the gates watched. Marin nodded because her mouth had gone dry. She had wanted to mention seams. Now she was walking into a training pit with 3 moon-blessed war-wolf cubs, an armorer trapped under one and an Alpha King watching every step. Her wolf stirred inside her, small and cautious. Omega did not mean weak. It did mean her instincts noticed alpha pressure the way skin noticed fire. Cedric's power filled the yard, not loud, not wild, but steady enough to make every other wolf measure its breathing. Marin kept her eyes on the torn armor. That was safer than looking at him. She entered through the lower gate. Brim lifted his head from the armorer's chest. His ears flattened. His nose worked. He smelled soap, wool, ash, old rain, and laundry steam on her. He did not smell metal polish, fear oil, incense, or the sour panic of men pretending confidence. Marin stopped 10 feet away and lowered herself to a crouch beside the nearest shredded shoulder plate. I am not here for your stomach, she told the armorer. The man gave a faint whimper of gratitude. I am here for the armor. Brim considered this. Rook leaned forward. Nyx dragged the sock closer and sat on it. Marin picked up the shoulder plate. The leather lining scraped her palm. She did not need to press hard. The raised seam caught at her skin like a tiny saw. There it is, she muttered. Cedric heard her from the gallery. Of course he did. Alpha hearing was another unfair royal luxury. What is it? Marin held up the inside of the plate. The seam is wrong. It should be flattened and covered. This one is rubbing each time the shoulder moves. See the dark line? That is not dirt. That is skin oil and irritated fur. The armorer lifted his head. That is impossible. The plate follows the sacred pattern. Brim growled. The armorer returned his head to the sand. Marin turned the plate. The morning light caught white flakes in the padding. And this is dried cleansing powder. Too much. It smells like bitter sage and silverwort. Several priests stiffened in the gallery. Marin sniffed once and regretted it. Strong enough to make my eyes itch. Rook sneezed. The sneeze shot the breastplate forward 3 feet. Lorne wrote something very fast. Marin picked up a belly strap next. This strap is too narrow. All the pressure goes into one line when they turn. The cubs are not refusing royal service. They are refusing chafing. Captain Sorrel leaned toward the king. I did tell the armory the cubs move differently from adults. The armorer protested from under brim. They are bred from royal war lines. They are also babies, Marin answered. That produced a second silence. Rook was the size of a small pony. Brim was sitting on a grown man. Nyx had begun to chew the Duke's sock into legal strips. Babies was not the word anyone in the court had dared to use. Marin used it because it was true. Cedric's expression changed by almost nothing. Marin saw it anyway. Something in him softened behind the stone. Then Elder Varric ruined it. Sentimentality will not prepare them for war. Marin rose with the strap in hand. Pain will not either. The words landed harder than she intended. Her wolf ducked inside her. Cedric did not rebuke her. He came down the gallery stairs instead. Every guard shifted at once. Power moved with him, not as threat, but as gravity. The cubs noticed. Rook stood. Nyx dropped the sock. Brim lifted his paw from the armorer and turned toward Cedric. The armorer rolled away with the grace of a man escaping history. Cedric entered the pit. He did not look at the scattered armor first. He looked at the cubs. Marin noticed that. He was grumpy, severe, and royal enough to make a spoon apologize for bending. But he was not indifferent. His attention moved over each cub like a hand checking for wounds. What do you need? Cedric asked Marin. No one had asked her that in the palace before. Not like that. Marin forced herself not to stare. 1 damaged shoulder plate, 1 belly strap, a bucket of warm water, plain soap, old soft wool, a dull needle, wax thread, and permission to ruin the sacred pattern. Elder Varric choked. Nyx wagged. Cedric studied her face. Can you fix it? I can make it hurt less. That was not my question. Marin let the pause breathe for a moment, because the yard had already produced enough noise for 1 royal incident. It is the honest answer. Captain Sorrel's mouth twitched. Cedric gave a short nod. You have until sunset. Marin stared at him. For 1 shoulder plate, she clarified. For 1 shoulder plate. He agreed. Then he turned to the court. No one is to interfere with Marin Ashby while she works. Elder Varric's cane struck the floor. Your Majesty, she is a laundry maid. Cedric's voice cooled. Then today the laundry has more sense than the armory. Nyx picked up the Duke's sock and threw it into the air. It landed on Lorne's clipboard. The steward stared at it. Marin did not laugh. She was an Omega laundry maid surrounded by alphas, sacred beasts, and court politics. But as Rook pushed the broken shoulder plate closer with his huge paw, Marin felt the first strange flicker of hope. She knew laundry. She knew seams. She knew what happened when powerful people treated discomfort as disobedience. And for once, the king had told everyone to get out of her way. The royal laundry sat below the east kitchens, where heat gathered and dignity came to die. Steam clouded the ceiling beams, buckets thumped. Soap lye stung the air. Wet sheets hung from ropes like surrender flags. Every surface held a stain, a patch, a pin, or a story someone richer wanted washed away. Marin loved it and hated it in equal measure. It was loud, hot, honest work. Linen did not lie. Blood browned. Wine purpled. Mud cracked. Cheap perfume clung in the seams long after noble ladies left a room. Fierce sweat smelled different from practice sweat. A shirt could tell her whether a guard had fought, danced, hidden, or been pushed into a fountain by a wolf cub. The damaged shoulder plate told her plenty. She laid it on her work table while the other laundry women gathered at a careful distance. Old Fenna, chief of the laundry, crossed her thick arms. Her gray hair was wrapped in a red scarf, and her eyes had seen every royal disaster since Cedric was 14. You brought a royal war plate into my laundry. Marin spread a towel beneath it. The king gave me until sunset. To do what? Ruin the sacred pattern. Fenna stared. The youngest laundry girl, Tilly, whispered, "Will we be executed?" "Not before supper," Fenna decided. "I already soaked the tablecloths." Marin smiled despite herself. She worked fast. First, she rinsed the inner lining with warm water and plain soap. The water turned gray, then greenish from old herb powder. Bitter sage rose in a cloud. Tilly sneezed 3 times. Fenna swore at the priests with impressive creativity. Next, Marin cut away the raised seam cover. Under it, the stitches were hard with dried sealant. Pretty from outside, cruel inside. "That would scrape a hip raw," Fenna observed. "Shoulder," Marin corrected. Cedric held still long enough for the words to become more than another argument in the sand. Still rude. Marin replaced the stiff lining with old sun-softened wool from a winter cloak that had belonged to no one important. She chose it because it had been washed 100 times. No dye smell, no perfume, no priestly powder. It had the warm, dull scent of clean sheep and summer air. She flattened the seam with a wooden mallet, then covered it with a strip of worn linen. She waxed the thread lightly. Not too much. Too much wax would harden. She stitched with small, slanted loops that could flex when the cub moved. Around mid-afternoon, Captain Sorrel appeared in the doorway. The laundry went silent. Sorrel was a beta, scarred and broad, with one silver ring in his left ear and a habit of looking tired enough to understand everyone. He carried a sealed note. "The king asks whether the plate is ready." Fenna put both fists on her hips. "The king can ask the sun to set faster too. It will ignore him." Sorrel's mouth twitched. "I will report that." "You will not," Marin warned. Sorrel handed her the note. It contained only 4 words. "Is it still painful?" Marin read it twice. "Not is it beautiful? Not is it proper? Painful." She swallowed and wrote beneath it. "Less. Not perfect." Sorrel carried the note back. 10 minutes later, another arrived. "Less is progress." Fenna leaned over Marin's shoulder. "That is almost encouraging. Should we alert the kitchens?" Marin folded the note and tucked it under a spool. "Keep stitching." By sunset, the shoulder plate was ugly. There was no polite way to deny it. The outer silver still shone, but the inside looked like a laundry maid had won an argument with a sacred object. The seam was padded. The edge was softened. The mooncrest stitching had been loosened where it pulled. The lining smelled like plain wool, clean sun, and no one trying to impress a priest. Marin carried it back to the training yard with soap on her sleeve and 3 needles stuck in her cuff. The court had returned. Of course it had. Nobody wanted to miss an Omega being wrong in public. Cedric stood at the lower gate this time, not above her. That small change did something inconvenient to Marin's heartbeat. Rook saw the shoulder plate first. He rose from the sand, enormous and wary. Nyx bounced behind him. Brim stayed near the wall, ears flat, eyes sharp. Marin stopped outside, biting distance, and set the plate on the ground. "I am not putting it on you," she told Rook. "You can smell it," Elder Varric scoffed. "Warwolves do not make wardrobe decisions." Rook placed one huge paw on the plate and dragged it closer. Cedric turned his head toward Varric. "Apparently they review materials." Captain Sorrel coughed. Rook sniffed the lining. Once. Twice. Then he lowered his head and rubbed his cheek against the wool. The gallery erupted in whispers. Marin's knees nearly forgot their job. Rook pushed his shoulder under the plate. Not all the way, just enough to test it. When it did not scrape, he froze. His ears moved forward. He shifted his weight, then stepped once, twice, 3 times. No growl, no snap, no attempt to turn anyone into furniture. Nyx barked. Rook looked pleased with himself and sat down on Elder Varric's ceremonial footstool. The footstool cracked. Varric closed his eyes. Merrin covered her mouth with one hand. Cedric did not cover his. He still did not smile. Not exactly. But his eyes warmed enough that Merrin forgot the court for a breath. Then Nyx stole the needle from her cuff. No, Merrin yelped. Nyx pranced away with the needle held sideways in his teeth, delighted by the sudden attention. 3 guards lunged. Nyx dodged. Rook stood with his new shoulder plate, decided this was a game, and blocked the guards with his body. Brim, offended by disorder he had not started, barked once and sent the armorer behind a barrel. Merrin put 2 fingers in her mouth and whistled. The sound cut through the yard. Nyx stopped. Everyone stopped. Merrin pointed at the ground. Drop it. Nyx's tail wagged. That is a needle, not treasure. Nyx considered. Drop it, and I will find you a ruined button. The needle fell. Nyx trotted over and sat at her feet. The court stared as if Merrin had moved the moon with laundry soap. Cedric crossed the sand slowly. A ruined button? He asked. Merrin bent to recover the needle. He likes small, hard things that make people upset. That explains several nobles. She glanced at him. He looked perfectly serious. That made it worse. Merrin laughed before she could stop herself. The sound escaped into the training yard, bright and very unwise. Elder Varric stiffened. Lorne dropped his quill. Cedric's gaze lowered to her mouth, then returned to her eyes. For one heartbeat, the yard smelled less like politics and more like warm sand, clean wool, and something dangerously new. Then Brim growled. Merrin turned. The smoke-gray cub had not moved closer. He was still by the wall, hackles raised, attention fixed on the repaired shoulder plate. Rook liked it. Nyx wanted to steal parts from it. Brim did not trust it. Merrin understood him immediately. He is the one it hurt worst, she said. The armorer started to object. Brim showed teeth. The armorer chose wisdom. Cedric's voice lowered. Can you help him? Merrin watched Brim's stiff stance, the way his left shoulder stayed slightly high, the way his nose wrinkled whenever the wind pushed the cleaned plate's scent toward him. Not tonight. Varric seized on it. Then the experiment is incomplete. Yes, Merrin agreed. The elder blinked. She kept her eyes on Brim. Trust is not a towel. I cannot wring it dry and hang it before supper. Captain Sorrel made a low sound that might have been approval. Cedric turned to the court. Merrin Ashby will continue tomorrow. The whispers sharpened. Merrin's stomach dropped. Continue meant attention. Attention meant resentment. Resentment landed hardest on people without rank. She should have said no. She should have handed back the plate, returned to the laundry, and let the palace remember her as a temporary curiosity. Rook nudged the repaired shoulder plate toward her. Nyx dropped the stolen needle into her apron pocket, apparently proud of his restraint. Brim watched from the wall, angry and afraid and trying to hide both. Merrin heard herself answer, I will need more old wool. Cedric nodded. You will have it. Plain soap. Granted. One of the cubs shifted nearby, adding a soft scrape of claws to the silence. No incense near the armor. One priest gasped. Cedric did not even glance at him. Granted. And nobody calls them beasts where they can hear. That one changed the air. Elder Varric's mouth thinned. They are sacred war beasts. Brim's ears flattened. Merrin's voice stayed mild. I did not say they were not sacred. I said they can hear. Cedric's eyes moved to Brim. The cub watched him back. Something silent passed between King and Warwolf. Then Cedric faced the court. Granted. Merrin bowed before anyone could see how much that mattered to her. That night, the laundry stayed awake. Not officially. Officially, the laundry closed after supper. Unofficially, old wool appeared from trunks, retired cloaks, winter blankets, and one scandalous velvet cape Fenna claimed had deserved death since the spring ball. Merrin sorted by softness and scent. Tilly rinsed straps. Fenna made tea strong enough to threaten the spoons. 2 kitchen boys brought leftover rolls and stayed to gossip. By midnight, everyone had an opinion on royal war armor. Most opinions were rude. Merrin liked them. The next morning, Cedric came to the laundry. He did not send Captain Sorrel. He did not send Lorne. He came himself, filling the doorway in a black coat, polished boots, and royal authority so sharp that 3 laundry girls stood at attention with wet sheets in their hands. Steam curled around him. Soap bubbles drifted past his shoulder. He looked profoundly out of place. Fenna took one look at the Alpha King and pointed at a dry patch near the wall. Stand there if you must be enormous. The laundry stopped breathing. Cedric stood there. Merrin bit the inside of her cheek. I came to see the progress, he told her. The progress is damp. The nearest witnesses pretended not to listen, which meant they listened with impressive devotion. Most progress is. Fenna narrowed her eyes. That sounded like a saying. It was almost one, Cedric replied. Tilly dropped a sheet into a bucket. Merrin showed him the new inner pads. She had made 3 versions. One thick for Rook, because his weight would crush padding faster. One flexible for Nyx, because he twisted like a ribbon in wind. One narrow and removable for Brim, because he needed control before he accepted contact. Cedric ran one gloved finger over Brim's pad. Why removable? If he panics, he needs to know he can get away from it. For a breath, even Nyx seemed to understand that timing mattered. Armor does not usually offer escape. That is why he hates it. Cedric absorbed that without defending the armor. Merrin liked him slightly for it. Then she stopped liking him because liking kings was a terrible habit with no practical use. He noticed the 3 needles stuck in her sleeve. Is that safe? Safer than keeping them where Nyx can reach. He stole my signet button this morning. Merrin glanced up. Did you leave it attached to something? My cuff. Then he showed initiative. Cedric's eyes narrowed. Fenna made a noise into her tea. Merrin returned to stitching before her mouth ruined her life again. Cedric remained for an hour. He did not hover. He did not offer foolish advice. He asked precise questions and listened to the answers. He learned that cloth had grain, that soap could leave a bite, that sun-drying mattered, and that silver thread was beautiful only on the side, not touching skin. At one point, he picked up a needle. Merrin nearly stopped him. Then she remembered he was a king, not a decorative statue. You will stab yourself if you hold it like a dagger, she warned. Cedric adjusted his grip. The needle bent. Tilly made a small squeak. Cedric examined the bent needle with the grim expression of a ruler facing rebellion. It surrendered, Merrin said. It lacked discipline. Merrin gave the silence room to settle over the sand and broken straps. It lacked proper handling, Fenna whispered. Good girl. Cedric heard that too. His mouth twitched. By noon, the whole palace knew the Alpha King had been sent to stand by the wall in the laundry and had lost a fight with a needle. By afternoon, half the servants had found reasons to pass the laundry door. Merrin wanted to crawl into a basket. Cedric returned anyway. The second fitting belonged to Nyx. They held it in the training yard, with fewer nobles and more ruined buttons. Merrin had learned that negotiation with Nyx required tribute. She brought a pouch of old coat buttons, 2 cracked toggles, and a buckle that had offended Fenna. Nyx saw the pouch and forgot to pretend he was dangerous. He bounded across the sand, stopped just short of Merrin, then sat with heroic self-control. Good, Merrin praised. Nyx's tail swept a circle in the sand. Elder Varric muttered that war wolves should not be bribed with laundry scraps. Nyx sneezed on his robe. Merrin held up the light shoulder pad. This is not a toy. Nyx stared at the button pouch. This is also not a toy. Nyx stared harder. Fine. 1 button after you try the pad. Nyx presented his shoulder so quickly that Captain Sorrel laughed aloud. The sound startled everyone, including Sorrel. Merrin slipped the pad under the test strap. Nyx wriggled. She waited. He wriggled again, then spun in a circle, trying to inspect his own shoulder. It is still attached, she assured him. Nyx rolled onto his back. Lorne wrote, Subject may have mistaken fitting for theater. Cedric read over his shoulder. Accurate. Merrin gave Nyx a cracked brown button. He carried it to Cedric and placed it on the king's boot. Cedric stared down. Am I being paid? Merrin fastened the strap properly. Possibly judged. Nyx tapped the boot with 1 paw. Cedric bent, picked up the button, and offered it back. Nyx refused. The cub trotted away with the dignity of a creature who had given a royal allowance. By the end of the hour, Nix accepted both shoulder pads, one belly strap, and a soft collar plate. He did not accept the ceremonial crest. He stole it 4 times and buried it once. Marin finally held the crest up to Cedric. "Does this need to be here?" Elder Varric answered before the king. "It symbolizes royal authority." Nix dug up the crest and dropped it in a water trough. Cedric watched the ripples spread. Royal authority may be moved to the outer plate. Marin nodded. "Good." Varric looked wounded. "Tradition is not a laundry pattern." "No," Marin agreed. "Laundry patterns can be adjusted before they injure someone." Sorrel turned away. His shoulders shook. Cedric said nothing, but the corner of his mouth betrayed him. That was the first day Marin wondered what it would be like to make the Alpha King laugh on purpose. She dismissed the thought at once. Omega laundry maids did not collect royal laughter. They collected stains, rumors, and caution. Brim took 6 days. That was what turned Marin from a curiosity into a problem. Rook liked the soft padding, Nix liked the tribute system, Brim liked nothing, trusted no one, and treated every strap as a personal insult. He did not attack Marin. That was progress. He did flatten himself against the wall whenever she brought the test pad near his left shoulder. He showed teeth if anyone else moved. He snapped once at the air when the armorer cleared his throat. The armorer stopped clearing his throat in public. Marin refused to rush. Every day, she sat in the sand 10 feet from Brim with the removable pad beside her. She mended other pieces while he watched. She talked to Rook when he tried to sit on her thread box. She traded buttons with Nix. She ignored Brim as politely as possible. On the 3rd day, Brim came close enough to sniff the pad. On the 4th, he touched it with one paw and sprang back as if it had insulted his ancestors. On the 5th, he carried it to the far wall and lay on it. Elder Varric called that failure. Marin called it ownership. Cedric began coming daily. He claimed he was supervising royal assets. No one believed him. He arrived in the morning and stood near the rail while Marin worked. Sometimes he brought new reports. Sometimes he brought damaged straps. Once he brought a tray of tea and looked as if the tray had blackmailed him. Marin accepted the tea. "Your Majesty," she began, "you do not need to bring this yourself." "Correct." He set the tray on a bench. She waited. He offered nothing else. Was there another reason? The kitchen said the tea would cool. Cedric did not answer at once, which gave the truth time to become inconvenient. That is how tea works. Then I arrived in time. Nix stole a biscuit from the tray and fled. Cedric watched him go. He is becoming bold. He was born bold. He is becoming organized. Rook chose that moment to sit against Cedric's legs. The Alpha King stopped moving. Rook sighed happily, pinning him in place. Marin kept stitching. "Do you require assistance, Your Majesty?" "No." Rook moved in the sand, and the scrape of his paw made the pause less elegant. "You are trapped. I am supervising from a fixed position." Marin pulled the thread through the lining and tried not to smile. Cedric looked down at Rook. "Move." Rook leaned heavier. "That was a royal command." Rook closed his eyes. Marin lost the battle and laughed. Cedric's gaze lifted to her. The sound faded in her throat, not because he looked angry, because he looked pleased, quietly, privately, like her laughter had become something he wanted to protect from the court. Marin bent over the armor. "He will move if you scratch behind his right ear." Royal werewolves do not require scratching. Rook opened one eye. Cedric's jaw tightened. 2 minutes later, the Alpha King of Valthorn was scratching a moon-blessed werewolf behind the ear while the wolf held him hostage. Captain Sorrel walked into the yard, saw them, and walked back out. The next day, Brim let Marin touch the removable pad while it lay beside him. Not his shoulder. The pad. Marin acted as if this were ordinary. Inside, her heart ran around the yard like Nix with a stolen buckle. "Good," she whispered. Brim's ears flicked. Cedric watched from the rail. Elder Varric watched from the gallery with increasing displeasure. The elder had reason. Every success Marin had made the court look worse. The royal armory had failed because it cared more about sacred design than comfort. The priests had failed because they confused cleansing scent with holiness. The Beastmasters had failed because they entered the pit smelling like orders and fear. Now an Omega from the laundry was teaching the palace that the moon's chosen warwolves hated bad tailoring. That was not merely embarrassing. It was political. Varric made his move on the 7th morning. Merrin arrived at the training yard and found Master Gare already there. Gare was a famous Alpha Beastmaster from the Northern Marches. He had silver hair, a blue sash, and the relaxed smile of a man who had never carried wet bedding up 4 flights of stairs. 2 assistants stood behind him with polished control rods and a chest of new armor. Merrin stopped at the gate. Her stomach sank. The new armor shone beautifully. That was the first warning. Beautiful things in palaces often hurt someone. Elder Varric stood beside Gare. Since the parade approaches, His Majesty's Council has requested qualified oversight. Merrin's hands tightened around her basket. Cedric was not there. That was the second warning. Lorne hovered nearby, pale and miserable. The king is in border council. Gare smiled at Merrin as if she were a child who had brought mud into a ballroom. You must be the laundry girl. Your enthusiasm has been noted. I will take over from here. Nyx growled. It was a small sound. Everyone heard it. Merrin set her basket down. The cubs have not accepted full armor yet, because they have been indulged. Rook rose from his resting place. Gare lifted one control rod. War animals require clarity. Brim's lips peeled back. Merrin stepped forward. Do not point that at him. Gare's smile thinned. Omega, stand aside. The word hit the yard like a slap. Merrin had heard worse. That did not make it nothing. Her wolf tucked close inside her, not from weakness, but from old memory. Stand aside. Be quiet. Let the alphas handle it. Carry the sheets. Wash the blood. Do not ask why there is so much of it. Brim lunged. Not at Merrin. At the rod. He crossed the yard like smoke and fury. Gare shouted. The assistants dropped the armor chest. Nyx grabbed a polished strap and tore away. Rook sat on the chest before anyone could close it. Chaos returned with excellent timing. Gare tried to issue a command. Brim removed the rod from his hand. Gare climbed the viewing ladder. Nyx helped by taking his sash. Lorne covered his eyes with the clipboard. Merrin did not enter the pit. Cedric had granted her authority, but not over a yard full of panicking alphas with rods. She went to the rail and whistled twice. Nyx froze with the sash. Rook looked up from the chest. Brim stood below the ladder, rod crushed under one paw, trembling with rage. Brim, Merrin called gently. That is enough. Brim's head snapped toward her. His eyes were bright. Gare, halfway up the ladder, muttered something about savage beasts. Brim's growl deepened. Merrin kept her voice even. He is not worth your teeth. The yard went still again. Brim breathed hard. Then he spat the rod handle onto the sand and backed away. Merrin exhaled. That was when Cedric arrived. He entered through the upper gate in full council black, with 3 border lords trailing him and Captain Sorrel close behind. One look took in the ladder, the crushed rod, the stolen sash, the occupied armor chest, and Merrin standing outside the rail with her face pale. The air changed. Cedric did not raise his voice. Who authorized control rods? No one answered. Varric lifted his chin. Your Majesty, the parade requires reliable command. I asked who authorized pain. Gare, still on the ladder, chose a poor moment to speak. The Omega's methods made them soft. Rook stood. The armor chest collapsed under the shift. Cedric's eyes stayed on Gare. Come down. Gare did not. Nyx dropped the stolen sash at Cedric's feet. The king picked it up, examined the bite marks, and handed it to Lorne. Record this as public feedback. Lorne wrote with visible relief. Cedric turned to Merrin. Were the cubs harmed? She shook her head. No. Frightened, angry, not harmed. Were you? The question was quiet. Too quiet for the court to dress up. Merrin wanted to say no. She wanted to be practical and sturdy and unbothered. Instead, she answered like a fool. Not by teeth. Cedric's face became very still. Varric realized the ground under him had moved. Master Gare is dismissed, Cedric declared. Gare protested from the ladder. Cedric continued. No control rods near the Moonwolves, no replacement armor without Marin Ashby's review. No one addresses her by rank instead of name while she serves under my order. Marin's throat tightened. Varric's expression hardened. You place the Royal War Wolves under a laundry maid. Cedric turned to him. No. I place them under the only person who has improved their condition. Nyx wagged. Then he stole the dismissal order from Lorne's clipboard and ran. The chase lasted 8 minutes. Marin caught him with a button. Nobody mentioned dignity again that morning. The palace spent the afternoon trying to decide whether the disaster had been a scandal, a breakthrough, or a performance staged by the Cubs for their own amusement. The servants chose breakthrough. The nobles chose scandal. The Cubs chose amusement. Rook demonstrated this by carrying the collapsed armor chest to the middle of the yard and sitting in it like a noble in a bath. The chest had no lid left, one hinge and several bite marks. Rook appeared deeply comfortable. Whenever an armory apprentice tried to retrieve it, he closed his eyes and became heavier by moral decision. Nyx made the problem worse by collecting objects that proved, in his opinion, that the yard now belonged to Marin. He brought her 2 buckles, 1 glove, a bent measuring rod, a spoon from the officer's table, and a ribbon that Captain Sorel refused to identify. Each item was deposited beside her basket with a proud little hop. Brim did not bring offerings. Brim watched. That was his way. He stood at the edge of the yard, smoke-gray fur bristling whenever anyone moved too fast. The crushed control rod lay near the gate as a reminder. Even after the yard calmed, Brim's body remembered it. His left shoulder twitched each time a guard's boot scraped stone. Marin saw it. Cedric saw her seeing it. That was becoming a problem too. The king no longer watched only the Cubs. His attention kept finding Marin's hands, her posture, the direction of her eyes. If she paused while stitching, his gaze went to the same place hers had gone. If she frowned at a strap, he waited for the reason. If she turned toward Brim before the cub growled, Cedric turned too. The palace noticed. Palaces noticed everything except what mattered. By supper, 3 versions of the story had already spread. In the kitchens, Marin had faced down a northern beastmaster with nothing but a button pouch. In the guard barracks, Brim had crushed a control rod because he respected laundry authority. In the West Gallery, Marin had bewitched the Cubs with Omega softness, which proved that half the West Gallery had never met an Omega with a needle in hand and a deadline. Fenna reported the gossip while sorting clean towels. Marin listened with her sleeves rolled up and her hair escaping its braid. She had no energy left to be shocked. The laundry steamed around her. Sheets swung overhead. Rainwater dripped from the cub's paw prints near the door because Nyx had sneaked in earlier and left evidence across the floor. Tilly tried to scrub the prints away. Fenna stopped her. The old woman said the prints were now part of palace history and should be treated with the respect given to all royal messes. That meant leaving them until morning, then making someone from the armory clean them. Marin laughed into a pile of straps. The laughter helped until the door opened and Lorne entered with 3 new ledgers. The steward had the haunted look of a man whose paperwork had reproduced overnight. He placed the ledgers on the table in a stack so neat that Fenna immediately distrusted it. The first ledger was for armor modifications. The second was for scent contamination. The third, Lorne explained with visible pain, was for wolf cub preferences. Marin stared at him. Lorne stared back. Neither of them wanted to be responsible for the phrase wolf cub preferences, but the day had made cowards of no one. Marin opened the third ledger. Rook's page began easily. Prefers broad pads, sun-dried wool, no belly strap before breakfast, and has a dangerous relationship with furniture. Nyx's page took longer because his preferences included buttons, theft, applause, soft shoulder plates, and being allowed to inspect every object that entered the yard. Brim's page was almost empty. Marin hated that. An empty page looked like failure. She wrote slowly. Brim needs warning before touch. Hates rods. Hates strong scent. Startles at scraping metal. Accepts distance. Watches left side. Then she added one more line. Not difficult. Hurt. Lorne read over her shoulder and went quiet. Fenna read it too. No one corrected the grammar. The next morning, Merrin began with Brim's page instead of Brim's armor. That choice confused everyone except Brim. She asked Captain Sorrel to clear half the yard. No armory apprentices, no priests, no observers with perfume, no polished rods anywhere in sight. The captain obeyed with the brisk pleasure of a man who had wanted to remove most of those people anyway. Merrin placed 6 objects in a line on the sand: soft wool, plain leather, waxed thread, a clean strap, a dull silver plate, the removable shoulder pad. Then she sat 15 feet away and mended a towel. The court found this boring. That was useful. Several nobles left after 10 minutes. 2 priests followed after realizing there would be no dramatic chanting. The armorer remained because his pride had been injured and needed witnesses. Elder Varric stayed because suspicion had become his main form of exercise. Brim watched the objects. Rook tried to sit on the silver plate. Merrin whistled once, soft and sharp. Rook sighed as if oppressed by labor law and moved. Nix stole the waxed thread, carried it 3 circles around the yard, then returned it in exchange for a button. That gave Brim time to see the objects touched, moved, and ignored without anyone being hurt. By noon, Brim had stepped close enough to sniff the plain leather. Merrin did not praise him. Praise could be pressure. She only kept mending. Cedric arrived during the quietest part of the exercise. He stopped beside Sorrel at the rail and took in the yard with a soldier's eye. Empty space, low sound, no direct approach, objects arranged in order of threat. Brim choosing each step. His expression shifted. He understood the strategy. Merrin kept her head bent over the towel, but her cheeks warmed anyway. The king did not interrupt. That helped more than any speech. At last, Brim touched the removable shoulder pad with his nose. The contact lasted less than a breath. Then he retreated to the wall, angry at the pad for allowing itself to be touched. The armorer muttered that such a small step meant nothing. Cedric answered before Merrin could. The king's voice was calm enough to be dangerous. He observed that a man who had spent yesterday under a wolf cub might avoid lectures on wolf courage. The armorer found an urgent need to inspect a bucket. Merrin did not laugh. Her needle shook once. Cedric saw. Again, that was a problem. By evening, Brim had touched all 6 objects. He had not accepted the pad. He had not allowed fitting. He had not become the shining parade creature Elder Varric wanted. But he had chosen to stay in the yard. Merrin wrote that in the ledger. Cedric read it later in the laundry while steam curled around his black sleeves. The line was simple. Brim stayed. Cedric touched the page as if it were a treaty. Merrin pretended to examine a strap. Her wolf, less cautious than her human sense, noticed the way his scent had changed. Less storm, more rain on stone. Still alpha, still dangerous, but not pressing. A Pallas Omega learned early to tell the difference between power that wanted obedience and power that was trying not to take too much room. Cedric was learning the second. That frightened her far more. The next complication came from the nursery wing. Not children. The royal nursery had been empty for years. The nursery wing was where ceremonial fabrics were stored because the rooms were dry and nobody wanted to explain why a cradle chamber contained war banners. Merrin went there to choose old wool from retired winter hangings. She found 3 noblewomen already there. Lady Cressida, Lady Maud, and Lady Yvaine stood near the fabric chests with the solemn expressions of women about to perform kindness as a weapon. Each wore a scent too expensive to be called perfume, and too aggressive to be called air. Merrin stopped in the doorway with her basket. The ladies greeted her by name. That was how she knew danger had arrived. Lady Cressida explained that the court admired her dedication. Lady Maud added that everyone found her rise inspiring. Lady Yvaine touched a folded wool hanging and suggested Merrin must feel overwhelmed by sudden responsibility. Merrin had cleaned enough wine from enough gowns to know when a compliment was looking for a throat. She thanked them politely and reached for the wool. Lady Cressida placed one gloved hand on the chest lid. The lady wondered whether an Omega from the laundry understood how quickly palace favor could change. She spoke gently, of course. like a knife wrapped in silk. She suggested Marin accept a generous pension after the parade and allow qualified people to turn her discoveries into proper policy. There it was. Not insult. Removal. Marin felt the old instinct to agree before punishment arrived. She could take the pension. She could return to the laundry. She could avoid becoming the court's favorite target. Then, she imagined Brim's empty ledger page. She imagined Rook wearing a painful strap because someone proper had improved her work. She imagined Nyx stealing sharp things because nobody had given him safe ones. Marin lifted the wool into her basket. She explained that comfort standards were not court favor. They were measurements, materials, and observed reactions. Anyone qualified could repeat them. That was the point. Lady Maud's smile cooled. Marin continued because stopping would be worse. If the court wished to replace her, it would first need someone who could identify dried sage oil and wool, flatten a seam without cracking the plate seal, and persuade Nyx to return stolen tools before he swallowed them. She would be delighted to train such a person after the parade. Lady Yvain asked whether she thought herself irreplaceable. Marin said no. Then she added that the work was not replaceable with flattery. The nursery wing went very still. That was when Rook pushed the door open with his head. No one had invited him. Rook did not care. He padded into the room, inspected the noblewomen, and sat on Lady Cressida's trailing silk hem. The sound of tearing fabric was small and exquisite. Lady Cressida turned white. Marin closed her eyes. Rook leaned against her basket and sighed. Nyx appeared behind him with one of Lady Maud's ribbons in his mouth. Brim remained in the corridor, watching the ladies with deep suspicion and excellent judgment. Marin took the ribbon from Nyx, returned it to Lady Maud, and thanked the ladies for their concern. Then she walked out with the wool, the basket, and 3 moon-blessed arguments against retirement. Cedric heard about the incident before she reached the laundry. Of course he did. Kings had spies. Laundry had better ones, but Kings did try. He found her in the lower corridor, where she had stopped to untangle Rook's fur from the torn silk. His expression promised consequences. Marin asked him not to punish the ladies for the conversation. Cedric asked whether he could punish them for the perfume. That made her laugh before she could stay dignified. He accepted the laugh like a gift, then grew serious. Marin told him she did not want protection that made her look fragile. She wanted the right to finish what she had started. Cedric listened. Then he told her that protection and respect were not the same, and he was trying to learn the difference quickly enough not to insult her. Marin had no answer ready for that. Nyx helped by attempting to steal Cedric's belt clasp. The moment survived because it became ridiculous. Most of their moments did. That was why she began to trust them. The following day, Cedric ordered the armory to work under laundry supervision. The phrase caused 3 minor noble headaches. Fenna framed the notice. The armory did not enjoy being supervised by women who knew exactly how stains behaved. Marin did not raise her voice. She did not need to. She had Fenna on one side, Tilly with a ledger on the other, and 3 werewolf cubs occupying strategic points around the room. Rook sat near the chest of rejected straps. Nyx guarded the button pouch. Brim stood by the door, making sure no one entered with Rod's heavy scent or confidence he disliked. Marin turned the review into a process. Every strap had to pass the wrist test. If the inner edge scratched human skin after 10 bends, it failed. Every lining had to pass the scent bowl. If warm water pulled oil into the surface, it returned to washing. Every plate had to be moved through a full range over a wooden frame shaped like a cub's shoulder, not a stiff ceremonial block. The armorer grumbled. Fenna invited him to wear one of his own straps under his arm for an hour. He stopped grumbling. Cedric arrived halfway through and found Marin standing on a low stool, demonstrating how a shoulder seam should fold. Her sleeves were rolled, her cheek had a streak of charcoal, her braid had nearly lost the battle with gravity. She looked nothing like court beauty. That was what made Cedric's attention so dangerous. He did not look as if he had discovered something pretty. He looked as if he had discovered something true. Marin nearly dropped the seam frame. Nyx saved her by biting the hem of the armorer's apron and pulling him backward into a bucket of rinse water. The armory laughed. The armorer did not, but even he began checking the seams properly after that. By the time the sun lowered, the first full set of revised armor stood ready for Rook. It was still silver, still royal, still marked with moonlines, but the inner surfaces were soft, the belly strap broad, and the crest moved away from the shoulder fold. Rook inspected it with great ceremony. He sniffed. He pawed the lining. He tried to sit on it. Merrin stopped him with one word. Rook gave her a wounded look and stood still while the armor was fitted. The first full fitting lasted 8 minutes, then 12, then 20. Rook walked, trotted, turned, and shook himself. The plates shifted but did not bite. The straps held but did not pinch. He attempted to sit on Captain Sorrel, but that seemed personal rather than medical. When Merrin removed the armor, no new rub marks showed in his fur. The armory saw. The guards saw. Cedric saw. Most importantly, Rook saw. The huge cub pressed his forehead against Merrin's shoulder. She staggered under the weight and laughed as she tried to stay upright. Cedric stepped forward, but she lifted one hand before he could help. She wanted to stand under the weight herself, not because she had to, because Rook had chosen her. Cedric stopped. He understood that too. That evening, the court's gossip changed again. The Laundry Omega was no longer merely lucky. She was becoming difficult to dismiss. That made people more careful and more vicious. It also made the servants louder in their support. Guards began asking whether their own shoulder plates could be reviewed. Kitchen boys brought Merrin scraps of soft leather. Stable hands offered grooming brushes. Someone left a basket of good apples outside the laundry with a note for Rook, Nix, and the Angry One. Brim ate the note. Merrin wrote Angry One in the ledger under public aliases. Cedric read it and laughed quietly enough that only she heard. That private laugh stayed with her longer than applause. After the Gare disaster, Cedric made Merrin's position official. Not grand, not noble. That mattered. The decree named her temporary armor comfort specialist for the Moonwolf Parade. Lorne suggested a shorter title. Fenna suggested useful girl who was right. Merrin begged both of them to stop. The title did not stop the gossip. Some servants were proud. Some nobles were insulted. Several young guards began bringing torn straps to the laundry as if Merrin had become a priestess of practical repair. Tilly started charging them biscuits for urgent work. Fenna pretended not to know. Cedric came every evening now. He still claimed supervision. Merrin stopped challenging the word because Rook had begun sitting near the laundry door 5 minutes before Cedric arrived. The cubs knew his schedule. That made denial pointless. One rainy night, Cedric found her alone at the work table with Brim's removable pad in pieces. The laundry smelled of damp wool, soap, and thunder. Everyone else had gone to supper. Rain tapped the high windows. A single lamp burned beside Merrin's elbow, turning the needle in her hand gold. Cedric stopped at the table. You missed supper. So did you. I am king. Missing supper is policy. Several witnesses discovered urgent interest in the floor while missing nothing. I am laundry. Missing supper is bad planning. He placed a covered bowl beside her. Stew. Still warm. Merrin stared at it longer than necessary. Did Fenna send that? Yes. Nix paused with rare respect for dramatic timing. Did she threaten you? Mildly. Merrin smiled and picked up the spoon. Cedric watched the torn pad. Why take it apart? The wool is right. The edge is wrong. Brim accepted it yesterday. She let the question hang there, plain as a stain no one could scrub away. He endured it. That is not the same. Cedric leaned one hip against the table. The gesture looked too human on him. Dangerous, again, because Merrin could handle kings better than men. You can tell the difference? So can you. He was silent. Thunder rolled beyond the windows. Merrin ate a spoonful of stew and tried not to care that he had noticed she had not eaten. Cedric picked up a scrap of linen. Teach me. She nearly dropped the spoon. To sew? To tell the difference. That was worse. Merrin could have laughed if he looked less serious. Instead, she placed the bowl aside and set Brim's old pad next to the new lining. This one stops him from complaining. This one lets him forget it is there. Cedric touched each in turn. The second is softer. Not only softer, see the edge? It does not end where his leg folds. It ends above it, where the fur lies flatter. The king stayed quiet, and that quiet made the answer harder to dismiss. The armory measured while they stood still. Most discomfort happens when no one important is watching. Cedric's hand paused. Marin wished she had not said that. He heard too much in plain words. Is that true for you? He asked. Her spoon felt suddenly heavy. She could have said no. She could have made a joke. She could have reminded him that laundry maids did not discuss discomfort with kings after rain and stew. Instead, she kept her eyes on the cloth. It is true for most people below stairs. Cedric did not apologize quickly. That made the moment harder. Quick apologies were often a way to step away from what had been revealed. Cedric stayed. Then I have watched the wrong places, he replied. Marin's fingers tightened around the needle. Outside, rain ran down the glass. Inside, the lamp hissed softly. For one strange second, the laundry did not feel like a basement. It felt like a room where a king had set down his crown without removing it. Marin cleared her throat. If you want to help, thread that needle. Cedric took the needle with battlefield focus. He failed. 3 times. The 4th time, he pushed the thread halfway through, looked almost satisfied, and pulled it out again by accident. Marin pressed her lips together. Laugh, he said. I would never. Nyx flicked one ear, apparently judging the humans slow again. You are already. Internally. The closest guards examined the walls with the dedication of professional eavesdroppers. That seems worse. She laughed then. Cedric's expression softened in a way no court portrait would ever be allowed to show. He finally threaded the needle on the 7th try. The knot was horrible. Marin held it up. This knot has fought in 3 wars. Did it win? No. It frightened civilians. Cedric's laugh was low and startled, as if it had escaped confinement. Marin went still. He did too. The rain filled the pause. Then Nyx burst through the laundry door with Cedric's glove in his mouth. Rook followed at a trot. Brim came last, wet, annoyed, and wearing the unfinished pad around one ear. The romantic danger collapsed under a pile of wolf cubs. Nyx dropped the glove into Marin's lap. Rook shook rain across the clean sheets. Fenna shouted from somewhere upstairs, If those sacred children flood my laundry, I am billing the crown. Cedric closed his eyes. Marin laughed so hard she had to hold the table. Brim sat with the pad on his head and looked furious that anyone found him charming. By the end of that night, Cedric had sewn one crooked practice seam, Marin had eaten the stew, and Brim had allowed her to remove the pad from his ear without snapping. It was not a confession. It was not courtship. It was only rain, thread, terrible sewing, and 3 wolf cubs behaving like weather with teeth. Marin remembered it anyway. 2 days before the Moonblade Parade, the sabotage happened. It began with silence. Marin entered the storage room where the finished armor waited and knew something was wrong before she saw anything. The room smelled too clean. Not soap clean. Temple clean. Bitter sage. Silverwort. Moon oil. The same sharp scent that had made Rook sneeze and Brim flatten himself against walls. Her stomach dropped. The 3 finished armor sets stood on padded frames. Rook's broad plates, Nyx's flexible set, Brim's carefully softened left shoulder. Every piece gleamed in the early light, and every inner lining carried a faint, oily shine. Marin did not touch it. That was the first rule of stains and lies. Do not smear the evidence. She stepped back and called for Lorne. The steward arrived with his clipboard, saw her face, and went pale. Should I get the king? Not yet. That surprised him. Not yet? If I accuse someone before I prove it, they will say the Laundry Omega panicked over a smell. Lorne swallowed. Did you? Marin pointed at the armor. Do I look panicked? You look very calm. That is worse. He wrote that down, then stopped. Sorry. Marin fetched clean cloth strips, warm water, and 3 glass bowls. She wiped a hidden part of each lining with a separate cloth. Pale gold oil bloomed in the water. She held each bowl near the window. The surface shimmered blue where moon oil floated. Then she checked the storage shelf. One jar had been moved. Dust marks revealed it. A cleaning rag had been shoved behind a chest. It smelled like bitter sage. The rag was high-quality linen, not laundry cloth. A tiny smear of blue wax clung to one corner. Temple seal wax. Lorne looked ill. Elder Varric keeps temple wax on his correspondence, he whispered. Merrin wrapped the rag in clean paper. So do 6 priests and half the council. That is not comforting. Evidence rarely comforts. Nick solved the next part by arriving with a stolen glove. He trotted into storage proudly, dropped the glove at Merrin's feet, and sat. The glove was dark blue. Fine leather, too narrow for Cedric, too formal for Captain Sorrel. It smelled of moon oil and bitter sage. Lorne's eyes widened. That is Elder Varric's. Merrin crouched. Where did you find this? Nyx wagged. He cannot answer, Lorne said. Nyx trotted to the side door, looked back, and wagged harder. Merrin followed. The little thief led them through the corridor, past the armory, around a fountain, and into the small antechamber behind the moon shrine. There, under a bench, sat a half-empty bottle of sacred conditioning oil. On the cork was one silver hair. Not wolf hair, Varric's hair. Lorne made a sound of clerical despair. Now get the king, Merrin said. Cedric arrived within 5 minutes. He listened without interruption while Merrin explained the smell, the oil bloom, the moved jar, the rag, the glove, the bottle, and the hair. His face grew colder with each point. By the time she finished, the storage room felt like winter under stone. He meant to make them fail, Cedric said. He meant to prove the old methods were necessary. Even Nick stopped plotting theft long enough to let the moment stand. He could have hurt them. Yes, the word hung between them. Cedric turned toward the door. Merrin stepped in front of him. It was a terrible idea. She did it anyway. Wait. His eyes lowered to hers. The full force of his anger pressed against the room. Merrin's Omega instincts noticed it, but her spine stayed straight. Move, Merrin. No. Lorne stopped breathing. Merrin held up the wrapped rag. If you confront him now, he will claim rage made you unfair. Let the evidence speak at the parade. The parade is in 2 days. Then we have 2 days to clean the armor and set the trap. Cedric's jaw worked. Nick sat beside Merrin and placed one paw on Varric's glove. That helped. It was hard to become a royal storm while a wolf cub guarded stolen evidence like a proud clerk. Cedric dragged one breath through his nose. Explain. Merrin did. They would clean the armor, not with temple powders. With plain soap, warm water, and repeated rinsing. They would leave one untreated scrap hidden in the storage room. They would ask all council members to inspect the armor before the parade. If Varric tried to add oil again, Nyx would not be the only one watching. Captain Sorrel liked the plan. Lorne hated it because it required 3 forms no one had invented. Fenna loved it because it gave the laundry permission to insult temple cleaning methods in writing. Cedric agreed because Merrin was right. He disliked that part visibly. For the next 2 days, the laundry became a war room. Fenna commanded rinse buckets. Tilly labeled evidence cloths. Sorrel stationed guards where they could see without being seen. Lorne wrote the first royal procedure for scent contamination in ceremonial armor and aged 5 years in one afternoon. Cedric worked beside Merrin, not always. He still had a kingdom, border reports, and a parade that threatened to become a public disaster. But whenever he could escape the council, he came to the laundry, rolled up his sleeves, and rinsed straps. The first time he did it, everyone stared. Fenna handed him a brush. If you are going to look tragic, do it while scrubbing. Cedric scrubbed. Merrin did not know what to do with that. Power was easy to resent from far away. It was harder when it stood beside her with wet sleeves, cleaning oil from a strap because a wolf cub's shoulder mattered. On the last night before the parade, Brim finally accepted his full shoulder set. It happened without ceremony. Merrin sat in the training yard under lantern light with the cleaned armor open on the sand. Brim approached, sniffed, backed away, approached again, and gave her a look full of suspicion. Yes, she told him. I know. Humans are exhausting. Cedric stood several paces away, silent. Nyx lay on his back with Varric's glove between his paws. Rook slept with his head on Cedric's boot. Brim lowered himself beside the armor. Maren waited. He nudged the left shoulder pad with his nose. She did not reach. He nudged it again, harder, then turned his shoulder toward her and held still. Maren's hands shook once. She made them stop. Slowly, gently, she laid the pad against his shoulder. Brim flinched. Then he stayed. Maren fastened the first strap, loose enough. Soft edge flat, no raised seam. She fastened the second. Brim's breathing quickened, but he did not growl. She placed the outer plate last, lighter than the old one. Mooncrest moved away from the fold of his leg. When she finished, she stepped back. Brim stood. He took one step. Another. Then he ran. Not away. Around the yard, fast, smooth, silver gray beneath moonlight. No snapping, no shaking, no frantic twist to bite at his shoulder. He ran because he could. Rook woke and bounded after him. Nyx grabbed the glove and joined the chase. The 3 werewolf cubs circled the yard in their fitted armor, moon marks flashing, paws drumming like summer thunder. Maren covered her mouth. Cedric stood beside her. For once, he did not hide what he felt. Relief changed him. It softened the hard line of his shoulders. It made him look younger and more dangerous in a different way. You did it, he told her. Maren watched Brim leap over a training beam and land without pain. They did it. You made it possible. She shook her head, because accepting praise still felt like accepting a gift with hooks in it. Cedric turned toward her. Maren. Her name in his voice stopped her. Not laundry girl, not Omega, not specialist. Maren. She faced him. The cubs thundered past. Wind lifted loose hair from her cheek. Cedric reached out, slow enough for refusal, and tucked the strand behind her ear. The gesture was small. It felt larger than the parade. Maren's breath caught. Cedric's eyes searched hers. Then Nyx crashed into a bucket. The bucket rolled across the yard with Nyx inside it, Varric's glove still clamped in his teeth. Maren burst out laughing. Cedric closed his eyes as if asking the moon for patience. Brim barked at the bucket. Rook tried to sit on it. The moment became ridiculous. It was better that way. Maren did not know what Cedric had almost said. She knew what she had almost wanted to hear. That was frightening enough. The Moonblade Parade dawned, bright, cold, and crowded. The Capitol filled every balcony, stair, wall, and roof. Banners snapped blue and silver. Temple bells rang. The air smelled of frost, roasted nuts, horse sweat, river mist, and 20,000 people waiting for royal dignity to either triumph or collapse. Maren stood behind the east arch with a repair kit under one arm. She wore her cleanest brown dress, a dark blue apron, and Fenna's best warning glare. Tilly had braided her hair with a strip of silver-gray ribbon. Maren had protested. Fenna had asked whether she planned to meet the public looking like a wrung towel. The ribbon stayed. The 3 wolf cubs stood before her in full armor. Rook looked magnificent and slightly sleepy. Nyx looked magnificent and guilty. Brim looked magnificent and alert, his left shoulder moving freely under the softened plate. Cedric entered a moment later in parade black. The courtyard seemed to draw itself upright around him. Guards straightened. Nobles arranged their faces. Priests lifted their moon rods. The Alpha King looked every inch a ruler carved from winter and command. Then Nyx spat Varric's stolen glove onto his boot. Cedric paused. Maren covered her mouth. Not now, he told Nyx. Nyx wagged. Especially not now. Rook lowered his head and sniffed the glove. Brim sneezed. Cedric picked up the glove with 2 fingers and handed it to Captain Sorrel. Evidence waits until the second bell. Sorrel tucked it into his coat. Of course. Maren's nerves tightened. This was the trap. Before the parade, the council would inspect the cub's armor in public. Varric would have to stand near the cleaned linings. The untreated oil scrap rested inside a sealed glass dish on Lorne's tray. The glove, rag, and bottle waited in Sorrel's coat. Nyx had been instructed not to steal anything until Marin clicked her tongue twice. Nyx had listened. Mostly. The first bell rang. Cedric moved to Marin's side. Are you ready? No. His mouth curved. Good. Neither am I. That helped. It should not have helped. Elder Varric swept into the courtyard with 3 priests and a face full of injured tradition. He paused when he saw the cubs standing calmly. For one glorious second, the old alpha looked disappointed that no one was bleeding. Lorne stepped forward and began the inspection in a clear voice. The armor had been cleaned according to the new comfort protocol. The linings had been reviewed. The cubs had accepted the fit voluntarily. Varric's cane struck the stone. Voluntary acceptance is an odd phrase for war animals. Brim's ears flattened. Marin clicked her tongue once, not twice. Brim settled. Cedric noticed. So did Varric. The elder's eyes narrowed. It seems the laundry maid has trained more than armor. Marin lifted her chin. I trained myself not to ignore pain. The courtyard quieted. Cedric's gaze did not leave Varric. Lorne opened the sealed glass dish and presented the untreated oil scrap. As part of the inspection, the court will review the scent contamination found 2 mornings ago. Varric's face went still. Nyx's tail began to wag. Sarl produced the glove, then the rag, then the bottle. Each piece landed on the evidence table with a soft, deadly sound. Varric spoke first. This is theater. Marin answered before Cedric could. No, Elder. Theater has cleaner costumes. Someone in the guard line choked. Fenna, watching from the servant arch, looked proud enough to frighten nearby footmen. Lorne read the findings. The oil matched the residue on the armor. The rag carried temple wax. The glove belonged to Elder Varric. The bottle had been found behind the moon shrine. The silver hair matched his. Varric's face reddened. I preserved tradition. Cedric's voice cut through the courtyard. You endangered the cubs. I protected their sacred purpose. Rook sat down, on Varric's cane. The crack echoed. Nyx chose that moment to drag the glove across the evidence table and drop it in front of Marin. Brim stepped between her and Varric. No growl, no lunge. Just a werewolf cub in fitted armor, standing freely before the Omega who had listened. The crowd saw. That mattered more than any speech. Cedric removed Varric from the parade council before the second bell. He did it publicly, clearly, and without rage. That made it worse for Varric. Rage could be dismissed as passion. Evidence had worse manners. The parade began on time. Marin expected to retreat behind the arch. Rook refused. The huge cub stepped sideways, blocking her path. Nyx caught her apron in his teeth and tugged. Brim stayed at her left side, shoulder plate gleaming. The crowd murmured. Marin's face went hot. I am not part of the parade, she whispered. Nyx tugged harder. Cedric turned from the head of the procession. His eyes met hers across the archway. Marin shook her head once. Not from fear, from warning. If he brought her forward as a romantic gesture before naming her work, the court would twist it. They would say she mattered because he favored her, not because she had earned authority. Cedric understood. She saw the moment he did. He faced the crowd. Before the Moonblade Parade begins, the crown recognizes Marin Ashby of the Royal Laundry. Her heart stopped. Every balcony leaned closer. Cedric's voice carried across the square. When trained masters failed, she found the cause. When tradition caused pain, she named it. When sabotage threatened the cubs, she preserved evidence instead of seeking applause. The moon wolves stand ready because of her work. Marin could not breathe properly. The laundry staff erupted first. Fenna shouted something that was not suitable for priests. Then the guards applauded. Then the crowd. The sound rolled through the square. Cedric waited until it settled. From this day, Marin Ashby is keeper of the Moon Wolves' gear and comfort. Her standards will govern every piece of royal war wolf equipment. Elder Varric, under guard near the side arch, looked as if he had swallowed a lemon made of law. Marin bowed because her knees needed a task. Rook bumped her shoulder gently. Nyx dropped a button into her hand. It was the ugly practice button Cedric had sewn days ago. The crowd did not know that. Marin did. Her fingers closed around it. Then Cedric walked back to her, not as a king crossing a stage, as a man crossing the small space he had carefully left open. He stopped before her with the cubs between them and the whole capital watching. "Marin," he said, low enough that only those near the arch heard at first. Then he lifted his voice. "I have one more thing to say, if you will allow it." The allow was important. It steadied her. She nodded. Cedric removed his right glove. Not a mating mark, not a command, not a claim, just his bare hand, offered in public. "I do not ask because you calmed my wolves," he said. "I do not ask because the court owes you honor, though it does. I ask because I have come to trust your judgment, your courage, your inconvenient honesty, and the way you make this palace kinder without making it weaker." The square had gone silent. Marin heard Nyx chewing softly on something he should not have. Cedric continued, "If you are willing, I would like to court you openly, not as reward, not as royal charity, as my choice, and only if it is also yours." Marin stared at him. She had imagined ridicule. She had imagined dismissal. She had imagined some private, impossible tenderness that vanished the moment politics entered the room. She had not imagined this. An alpha king asking in public after naming her work first. Her wolf lifted her head inside her, not frightened, listening. Marin looked at the three cubs. Rook, steady and huge. Nyx, bright-eyed and sticky with theft. Brim, tense but standing free in the armor that no longer hurt. Then she looked at Cedric. This time she did not lower her eyes. "Only if you stop calling my laundry notes royal strategy." Cedric's expression softened. "Too late," he answered. "They saved the kingdom." The crowd laughed. Marin did too. Then she placed her hand in his. The square burst into cheers. Rook howled. Brim joined, fierce and clear. Nyx tried to howl with the button in his mouth and produced a sound like a heroic kettle. That broke the last of the court's dignity. Even Cedric laughed. The Moonblade parade began with Marin walking beside the three werewolf cubs, not hidden behind them. Cedric walked at her other side, close enough that their hands brushed twice. The second time, he did not pretend it was an accident. Marin did not either. Through the square, past the temple steps, under banners bright as winter stars, the cubs moved in perfect formation. Mostly. Rook tried to sit on a drum once. Nyx stole a ribbon from a child, then returned it with a button. Brim growled at one priest who smelled faintly of sage until the man stepped back and reconsidered his life. The crowd loved them. More importantly, the cubs were comfortable. Marin watched their gait, the flex of shoulder and rib, the way their fur lay smooth beneath the edges. No scraping, no panic, no frantic bites at straps. She had done that, not alone, but truly. At the end of the parade route, Cedric leaned closer. "You are counting their steps. I am checking the fit. During your public triumph?" The yard took one breath with her, full of dust, soap, and damaged dignity. "Especially during my public triumph. Of course." His voice held warmth now. Marin glanced at him. "You are smiling." A dangerous accusation. A visible fact. Cedric let the sentence land before royal habit could soften it. "I will ask Lorne to deny it officially." Nyx dropped the ugly button at Cedric's feet. Cedric picked it up and placed it in Marin's palm. "Keep it," he told her. "It is terrible." Brim breathed out through his nose, a small warning against foolishness. "It survived my training." "Barely." Lorne lowered his quill, which somehow made him look even more attentive. "So did I." Marin closed her fingers around the button. Later, after the parade, after Varric's removal, after the armory received 3 pages of new comfort standards and Fenna received a royal apology for the laundry being underestimated, Cedric came to the east courtyard. Marin was there with the cubs. Rook slept across the steps. Nyx had arranged stolen objects in a neat line. Brim rested with his head on Marin's knee, his fitted shoulder plate beside him for cleaning. Cedric stopped at the edge of the quiet. "May I sit?" Marin raised one eyebrow. "You are asking me?" "I am learning." Rook opened one eye and made a low, approving sound. Cedric sat beside her on the stone step, careful not to disturb Brim. For a while, neither spoke. The courtyard smelled of cooling stone, clean wool, and distant festival smoke. Moonlight silvered the armor plates laid beside Marin. Her hands ached, her back hurt, her dress was wrinkled, her ribbon had slipped. She had never felt less invisible. Cedric rested his forearms on his knees. I should have seen it sooner. The armor? The cubs. The court. You. Marin ran one hand over Brim's fur. People see what their rank teaches them to see. And what did yours teach you? Stains, seams, who is about to shout, who has been crying, which sheets belong to guests having affairs. Cedric turned his head. Marin smiled. Laundry knows everything. That is alarming. Correct. Nyx pushed a stolen spoon into Cedric's boot. Cedric accepted it with growing professionalism. Marin watched him. You asked to court me. I did. That will make trouble. The smallest cub went still, which made the silence feel suspiciously official. Yes, I am still an Omega from the laundry. Marin held steady while the court decided whether honesty counted as disobedience. Yes, I am keeping the job. For once, his silence served the work instead of the crown. I would be disappointed if you did not. She studied him for any trace of royal performance. There was none. Only Cedric, tired after a public victory, sitting on a cold step with a spoon in his boot and a wolf cub using his shadow as a pillow. Marin let herself believe one small piece at a time. Then you may court me, she said. His eyes warmed. Thank you. Slowly. Good. A wolf cub shifted nearby, reminding everyone that the real judges had teeth. No public speeches every time. That may be difficult. I have a steward now drafting procedures. The court tried to look polite and failed in several directions at once. Cedric. His name came out before she could stop it. He went still. Not cold. Not proud. Moved. Marin's face warmed. Nyx, sensing weakness, stole the ugly button from her hand. Nyx! The cub bolted. Rook woke and joined because anything worth chasing was worth ruining. Brim scrambled up, then stopped, realized his shoulder did not hurt, and ran after them. Marin sprang to her feet. Cedric rose beside her. The 3 moon wolf cubs tore across the courtyard with the ugly button, while the Alpha King and the Omega laundry maid chased them under moonlight. They did not catch Nyx for 12 minutes. When they finally did, Cedric was laughing. Marin was breathless, and the button had somehow ended up in Rook's ear fur. Marin leaned against the fountain, gasping. Your sacred wolves are criminals. Our sacred wolves, Cedric corrected. The word our landed softly. Marin looked at the 3 cubs. Rook shook the button loose. Nyx pounced. Brim stood over both of them like a guard, pretending not to play. Then she turned to Cedric. Our wolves, she agreed. Cedric took her hand. No parade watched them now. No elder objected. No title explained it. Only the moon, the courtyard, 3 badly behaved werewolf cubs, and a future that smelled faintly of clean wool, soap, and trouble. Marin squeezed his hand once. The Alpha King squeezed back. And somewhere near the fountain, Nyx stole the button again. The chase that followed became the first unofficial test of Marin's new authority. No one in the East Courtyard knew whether a keeper of the Moon Wolves' gear and comfort had the right to order an Alpha King around a fountain. Marin decided the answer was yes when Cedric nearly stepped on a freshly cleaned shoulder pad. She pointed him left, sent Rook right, and told Brim to block the arch before Nyx escaped into the Rose Walk. Cedric obeyed. That was the part the guards remembered. Not the public speech, not the parade, not even Varric being removed with temple oil on his glove. The guards remembered their cold Alpha King turning sharply because an Omega laundry maid with soap on her sleeve had told him to mind the armor. Nyx remembered only the button. He darted between Rook's legs, sprang over a flower bed, and tried to hide beneath a stone bench. Brim blocked him with one silent step. Rook lowered his huge head from the other side. Cedric approached from behind with royal patience and grass stains on one knee. Marin knelt in front of the bench and held out her palm. Trade. Nyx blinked at her. She produced a cracked horn toggle from her apron pocket. The button landed in her hand at once. Cedric stared at the toggle. You carry emergency bribes? I carry practical solutions. Rook sneezed into the fountain. Brim leaned against Marin's shoulder for one brief second, then pretended it had been an accident. That tiny weight meant more than another round of applause. It meant the most frightened cub now trusted her with closeness. Marin tucked the ugly button safely into her pocket. Tomorrow there would be new rules, new gossip, and probably 3 new disasters with fur. There would be nobles who smiled too sweetly, and priests who sniffed every strap. There would be armor to clean, standards to write, and a king learning that courtship could involve laundry schedules. For once, Marin did not feel like the future was a door closing before she reached it. It felt like a gate left open. 3 moon wolf cubs thundered through it first, of course. Cedric followed beside her, still holding her hand. Thank you for listening. If this story made you laugh, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss our next story. We'll see you in the next one.